Egg. It all begins with something almost fragile. The single egg that holds Mothra's rebirth. In Toho and Legendary Pictures films, Mothra is typically introduced as an egg that hatches into her larval form. There's this near mythical aura to it. The filmmakers never offer the audience a chance to see Mothra skip the line. The egg isn't just set dressing, it's the entire starting gun for her life cycle, and the egg is central to her life cycle across the core Toho and Legendary Pictures film continuities. The specifics get even stranger. On Infant Island, the egg is protected as sacred, not by individuals, but by entire cultures, who treat its survival as a kind of collective insurance policy. We're not talking mass spawning. The egg is usually treated as sacred and receives focused care from the culture that protects it. Mothra is often depicted with a single egg central to her narrative. The egg is singular, deliberate, and most film iterations frame her egg as an object of reverence. Now, here's the problem. The egg's supposed invulnerability isn't real. In every movie, the stakes are right out in the open. If anything happens to this egg, Mothra's entire future risks vanishing. The egg is often threatened, requiring intervention from those who protect Mothra. The time Mothra spends in this stage is shockingly brief, hours or days, not years. There's no slow buildup. The egg is only a pit stop. It's always hatching into her larval form before anyone gets comfortable. People tend to think the egg is some eternal relic, a lasting symbol, but it's really a countdown. Because the minute tension spikes or some disaster lands, it hatches. Across continuities, Mothra's egg reliably transitions to larva early in the story. The egg is the reset, the restart. It's not meant to stay intact. It's how Mothra gets a second chance, but that moment passes in a flash. Imagine it now. A stadium-sized egg, alone on a beach, surrounded by worshippers and storm clouds, glowing faintly in the darkness, the whole world holding its breath for a sign of movement, and then, with almost no warning, the shell shatters, and the story starts again. Her hatching is consistently a pivotal on-screen moment. Larva. When she hatches, Mothra emerges as a giant larval caterpillar. It's not a subtle evolution. This is the most tactile, animalistic phase she ever shows. Her larval form first films its way onto the screen in Toho's 1961 Mothra, a suit actor under layers of silk and latex, but the effect is unmistakable. Major film versions preserve the larva's caterpillar-like design. The larva is always presented as an outsized silkworm built to crawl, coil, and defend. What makes the larva stage stand out is how often it's repeated and how much it varies. Sometimes Mothra hatches as a single larva, struggling against enormous odds. Other times, offspring such as twins appear, most notably in Godzilla Tokyo SOS 2003. Mothra's larval line sometimes continues through offspring, always depicted as giant caterpillars. In Legendary Pictures' Godzilla King of the Monsters in 2019, the larva stage is depicted as part of Mothra's emergence. It's easy to assume the larva is just a transitional throwaway, quick crawl, quick cocoon, and then on to the pretty phase. And yes, she does cocoon almost immediately in most films, but that's missing the bigger picture. The larva is often framed as a protector, intervening when island cultures, or even Japan, face threats too big for humans to solve. She's not just passing through, she's acting, defending, and sometimes sacrificing. In her original film incarnation, suit actors Haruo Nakajima and Katsumiya Tezuka give her physical heft. And the effect is pure kaiju drama. A recurring pattern is Mothra producing offspring, sometimes twins, when approaching death. So the question is, if Mothra's larva is portrayed as just a temporary monster, isn't it wasting screen time? But the facts say otherwise. Every major film canon gives her larval form purpose and stakes. Whether she appears as lone defender or multiple siblings, the larva isn't designed for speed. She's built for resilience, for struggle, and for being the first point of contact between Mothra and humanity. The constant callbacks and recurring suits aren't accidents. They exist to root the character in real animal behavior and to ground the spectacle in something the audience instinctively gets. This isn't just spectacle, it's design. The larva makes Mothra approachable, relatable, and gives every cycle a beginning that feels earned. Not just for monster fans, but for anyone drawn to the idea of survival starting from weakness. So as the larva wriggles out onto the sand, every step is exactly as planned. Subscribe and tell us in the comments which Mothra evolution you think was the most legendary. Let's get back into it. Cocoon. If the larva is chaos on legs, barreling through every obstacle with the subtlety of a wrecking ball, The cocoon phase flips the script by being equally dramatic, but in the opposite way. The larva's failures are loud and uncontainable. The cocoon's failure is calculated, deliberate, and absolutely public. Where you might expect a monster to hide away to transform, Mothra makes her metamorphosis into an unmissable event, practically daring the city to get involved. Take her transformation in Godzilla vs. Mothra, 1992. After being wounded by the Japan Self-Defense Forces, she doesn't flee to some distant cave. Instead, Mothra hauls herself up the face of the National Diet Building in the center of Tokyo, a government landmark, not exactly inconspicuous, and starts to cocoon herself right against the stone. People keep going about their business while silk wraps around the columns, as if watching a giant kaiju hijack their seat of government is just another Tuesday. No military intervention stops her, no evacuation clears the area. The world looks on as the chrysalis grows. The entire sequence is played in plain view, layer by layer, with the structure swelling against a backdrop of national symbolism. And this isn't some weird one-off. Across Toho's films, Mothra's metamorphosis is always out in the open. The cocoon typically forms out in the open, crafted from silk, as seen in multiple film continuities, including MonsterVerse and classic Toho eras. The process is depicted as unmistakable, with Mothra forming a distinct silk cocoon before emerging as an adult. The cocoon, shimmering and bulky, becomes part of the film's landscape, not an invisible retreat. This metamorphosis is depicted in the films as Mothra cocooning herself to become the adult moth, a process repeated across eras and continuities. This is a direct lift from her biological inspiration, just like the silkworms and giant silk moths that underpin her design. The transformation hinges on confinement and patience, not brute force or supernatural intervention. The cocoon is generally formed in exposed public places and is a recognizable part of her on-screen transformations. The plots never make the cocoon a fortress. In Godzilla vs. Mothra, 1992, after sustaining heavy injuries, she starts building her cocoon anyway, as if daring fate to intervene. There's no secrecy, just stasis amid chaos. In the films, Mothra's cocoon is formed amid ongoing crises, and her transformation is witnessed in public view. And that's the contradiction in play. The transformation is not a retreat, not a safe haven, but a sign that the old form is utterly spent, and something greater is waiting to emerge. The cocoon is as much declaration as it is fortress. In Toho and Legendary Pictures, it signals the end of the destructive larva and the imminent arrival of something unrecognizable. Mothra's transformation is a recurring sequence in the films, with her metamorphosis often taking place where it is witnessed by others. Imago, adult Mothra. If cocooning is about the dramatic transition, remote, strange, and exposed, Imago is direct, present, and utterly unmistakable. The moment Mothra bursts out from the cocoon, her adult form doesn't just arrive, it takes over. The giant winged moth kaiju emerges in a blaze of color, drawing on the visual cues of silkworms and giant silk moths in the Saturniidae family, iridescent wings, feathery antennae, and vast, dark eyes that don't blink. Every film iteration pays homage to those motifs, locking them in as the core of Mothra's design. This isn't a form you mistake for anything else. Her Imago debut goes all the way back to Mothra, 1961, where she emerges as a mythic figure accompanied by the twin fairies who speak for her. These miniature humanoids aren't just a sideshow, they're essential to Mothra's legend, present in nearly every film. Whether in Toho or Legendary Pictures' MonsterVerse, Imago Mothra is always portrayed as Earth's protector, a force tied to cultural identity, her native island, and Japan itself. Her power isn't atomic breath or brute violence, it's presence, wing beats that scatter luminescent scales, the sense that the battle is more ritual than skirmish, her fairies echoing every command. The Imago form recurs throughout Mothra's appearances in Toho and Legendary Pictures films. Mothra's adult incarnation is often misunderstood. Viewers sometimes lump her in with other moth-like kaiju, but the distinction is clear in every official canon. The Imago is the adult stage, separate from the destructive larva both in powers and in personality. After metamorphosis, Mothra remains in her Imago form for the duration of her life in each film continuity. The Imago stage often ends with Mothra producing eggs, and in some films, twin offspring emerge. This isn't just about survival, it's about continuity. The adult Mothra sets the stage for new life, creating cycles that echo through every era of the films. Now, if you want to know what sets the Imago apart, it's easy to fall into traps. People confuse her phenomenon with lesser transformations or similar-looking kaiju, missing the clean division between larva and adult, between destruction and heroism. The Imago is not just another winged monster. She is a recurring, consistent force, one whose appearances are always tied to intervention, protection, or legacy. Stack up the evidence: every debut marked by spectacle, every crisis flashed with the arrival of the fairies, every heroic act punctuated by wing beats and brilliant scales, every hint at offspring tying her story into the next cycle. Yet for all this consistency, there's still a single unanswered question. Why does this particular form, with these particular motifs and legend, always return? Why do the films never abandon the twin fairies, or the Saturniidae inspired visual, or the cycle of eggs and twins? That answer is withheld, and the mystery only deepens. Her myth. Aqua Mothra. The moment an evolution wipes out the last line of defense, the stakes don't just rise, they burst open, and suddenly the outcome is dictated by whether the next form even exists. Mothra Leo doesn't just transform for spectacle, he mutates out of necessity, and Aqua Mothra is proof of what happens when the rules are rewritten underwater. This isn't an add-on. Aqua Mothra is a canonical evolution of Mothra Leo, first appearing in the 1996 Toho film Rebirth of Mothra. Leo's transition is triggered when Daghara, the film's central antagonist, drives him straight into the sea and the Nilekani Pyramid, forcing Leo to adapt or be annihilated. The transformation isn't subtle. Leo transforms into Aqua Mothra for aquatic combat after being forced into the ocean by Daghara. The result? Aqua Mothra has a wingspan of 30 meters and a mass of 3,500 metric tons. Aqua Mothra's visual and thematic cues are blunt. Everything about this form screams aquatic adaptation. The wings lose their terrestrial delicacy, gaining a functional shape for movement and stability underwater. Leo's abilities shift, focusing on maneuverability, speed, and direct engagement against creatures that would annihilate his prior forms. And it's not just design. Aqua Mothra allows Leo to defeat Daghara during their underwater battle. Overcoming an enemy that specialized in marine destruction required a complete overturn of the old strategy. The hardest detail to justify is how the transformation works at all. Aqua Mothra's stats are listed as a mass of 3,500 metric tons and wingspan of 30 meters. The sticking point is the mechanism. All prior Mothra evolutions were fast-tracked by environmental needs, but none saw Leo forced into an element he was unprepared for. The transformation isn't just adaptive, it's desperate, breaking the pattern of slow metamorphosis and pushing the canon's internal logic to the breaking point. As Aqua Mothra, Leo demonstrates powers built for underwater dominion, not just survival. It's the only form that bridges the gap between terrestrial moth and oceanic combatant, letting Leo tackle threats that the category up to this point had no solution for. But what this evolution actually proves is bigger than the battle. The canon isn't just about forms that look cool or tick the next box, it's about escalation. The evolution isn't a linear chart, it's a record of emergency responses, each form solving a singular crisis, then vanishing as soon as the threat is gone. Rainbow Mothra. When the last form broke the chain for survival, Rainbow Mothra bends it right out of sight. Evolution isn't just about overcoming one monster. In the trilogy beginning with Rebirth of Mothra, 1996, the powered-up Rainbow Mothra outgrows its own category and makes the old rules obsolete. Rainbow Mothra has multicolored wings and a mass greater than Aqua Mothra. The numbers aren't rounded for drama. Rainbow Mothra's weight is listed as 5,900 metric tons. This form doesn't just exist for surface spectacle, it's the bridge to Aqua Mothra and beyond. Rainbow Mothra can transform into Aqua Mothra to battle Daghara underwater, making the transformation from land to sea a matter of choice, not emergency. That versatility isn't wasted. Rainbow Mothra takes on Daghara by transforming into Aqua Mothra, demonstrating a range that blows past linear progression, and the new form isn't just a weapon against Daghara. Rainbow Mothra fights King Ghidorah during the Rebirth of Mothra trilogy. The result is a form subjected to brutal assault. Rainbow Mothra is wounded by King Ghidorah and encased in a cocoon. It all pivots on the hardest figure in the canon, 5,900 metric tons. Rainbow Mothra's mass is greater than the aquatic form. This is a Mothra who absorbs punishment and adapts in ways that were never permitted by the old system. The sheer volume and physicality imply a beast that outlasts its own weaknesses, pushing the boundaries not just of style, but of function. What truly matters is how Rainbow Mothra hands the baton to the next phase. Powered Up isn't just a label, it's a mechanism that reveals the system itself. All past evolutions are tied to crisis. Rainbow Mothra is the first form that multiplies options and dimensionality, setting up an evolution arc where adaptation can mean the difference between extinction and final victory. The system of forms has moved from emergency metamorphosis to a branching engine of power and survival. The proof is vibrant, measured, and impossible to ignore. Armor Mothra. When everything else was defined by a single battle or adaptation, Armor Mothra warps the field, not just defeating enemies, but fundamentally rewriting the stakes for everything in its orbit. Armor Mothra first appears in Rebirth of Mothra 3 as the ultimate form of Mothra Leo, a driving force in the climactic fight against King Ghidorah, the King of Terror. This isn't an evolution defined by an incremental upgrade. Armor Mothra emerges from a cocoon in the present day, and in one sweeping arc turns the fate of worlds. The script does not provide specific official numbers for Armor Mothra's wingspan or weight. These aren't just big numbers, they're the largest and most definitive in the trilogy, marking Armor Mothra as the final evolved form, no further versions overtaking it. The visual cues are merciless. Armor Mothra's wings are described as huge armor wings with a metallic finish, protective enough to shield against enemy beam attacks. The form pushes its advantage by making flight a weapon. Mach 15 is the listed top speed, and the wings carve through tough hide, a feature that no previous incarnation possessed. That's not just power, it's dominance over the field. Armor Mothra displays powerful attacks at the climax, decisively overwhelming King Ghidorah. Viewers who are tempted to write off Armor Mothra as a mere spectacle form miss the single detail that separates it from earlier evolutions. Armor Mothra isn't just hard-hitting. Its armor is noted for high protection, resisting strong energy-based attacks. After defeating King Ghidorah, Armor Mothra even sheds its armor and becomes Eternal Mothra, proving it's not just a final state, but a functional end to the evolutionary sequence. The underlying mechanism was always escalation, not just by threat, but by structural necessity. Each evolution up to this point answered a crisis with adaptation. Armor Mothra closes the loop by showing that the system isn't just a series of transformations, but a fully constructed series of responses, topped, locked, and finished only when the last terror is destroyed.